Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So, dear participant, I welcome you on behalf of APPNA MERIT. As you know, we have been creating and running these webinars for the last couple of years, and the objective is to get connected all the stakeholder on this common platform. So we had invited people from clinical research organization, from institutions, and from industry and innovator. So all around. So it's a 360-degree scan. We have created a white paper, which is also available. And I'm going to share with you all the activities link in the window. And I welcome, very warm welcome, our valuable speaker for today's session. And I will introduce you both of them. And our respected panelist for today's session, Dr. Nasiruddin Mahmood and Dr. Umar Hayat. So first of all, let me introduce Dr. WAMEEZ MOHYUDDIN KADRI. He works with Highnoon Laboratories, Pakistan, as the head of Medico-Marketing. His role encompasses extensively collaborating with marketing and consumer team to strengthen the right strategy by ensuring compliance with the best practices. This includes engaging with stakeholders to foster the continuing medical education program. He has been associated with the healthcare industry for more than 15 years. Dr. Kadri has worked as the Chief Operating Officer at Surveyed Pharmacy Limited, transforming it into the fastest growing retail pharmacy chain in Pakistan. He holds 2 postgraduate degrees, MS in Computer and Bioinformatics from the University of London. He is an Allama Iqbal Medical College, Lahore graduate and an Hutchisonian College, Lahore alumni. So that is a very nice coincidence that our panelist, Dr. Nasiruddin Mahmood, is also from the same alumni. The other speaker is Dr. IMRAN MAQSOOD, but he's an advisor at Highnoon Laboratories, Pakistan, heading the medical department. He is responsible for ensuring compliance with medical and ethical standards, pharmacovigilance, and supporting the regulatory division. Dr. Bhatt has over 20 years of experience in healthcare and pharmaceutical and has been running training, continuous medical education programs, and clinical trials at different organizations. He holds an MPhil in community medicine, a master in health administration, and a medical degree from Allama Iqbal Medical College, Lahore. Now, I will introduce the panelist for today, Dr. Nasiruddin Mahmood. He is a US-based certified pediatrician who did his neonatology fellowship at Sick Kid Hospital, Toronto. Just to inform some of the participants from Pakistan, the Sick Kid is one of the leading children's hospital in North America. So after that, he moved back to Pakistan, served there at Aga Khan and, part of the first, I think, the faculty. He moved back to Canada after 22 years in Pakistan. He is on faculty at the University of Toronto and at the Aga Khan University in Karachi. Dr. Mahmood is among the founder of Child Life Foundation, which is a great program which provides emergency care to more than 1.5 million children in Pakistan free of cost. Their network has a hub and spoke model of 12 pediatric emergencies in government hospital and 3 provinces with a network of 200 plus telemedicine centers in district and tehsil hospitals. So I welcome the speaker and the panelists. and the participants. So that's a brief overview. A few things, all those people who will attend this webinar for the full duration, they are entitled to have the participation certificate. So that is an announcement. Now it is over to Dr. WAMEEZ to start his webinar.
Raji, thank you so much for having us. It's a great pleasure. And I am just going to share my screen, if I may. Sorry, just a second. Yeah. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Second. There you go. Sorry. All right. Right. Thank you so much once again for giving us this opportunity to talk about a bit about Highnoon and what we do and what kind of initiatives we take, especially to better understand health. I hope I'm audible. Can you hear me?
Yes, we are.
Right.
We are hearing. We are hearing.
Thank you so much. So Highnoon was established back in 1984 as a private limited company. And later in 1995, we became a public limited company. And right from its inception, alliances with global partners enabled Highnoon to excel. And it became the first healthcare company of Pakistan origin to reach top 20 league of local pharmaceutical industry. Quality has been our forte. And our organization, our manufacturing plants are ISO certified, ISO 9001, 2008 approved. And we also have, we are also compliant to current good manufacturing practices, which we call as CGMP. So all our plants are ISO certified and CGMP certified. And we were privileged to be amongst Forbes Asia's 200 best under $1 billion companies. We were there in 2019, 2021, 22, and 23. And I don't think there are many companies from Pakistan reaching that list. So it was indeed a great honor for us to be there and a lot of hard work to reach to that level. We operate in various segments from allergy, anti-infective, cardiology, gastroenterology, metabolic, musculoskeletal, obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, respiratory, and neurology. But our spirit is we continue to evolve. We continue to realign our portfolios to improve patient care. And that we do by, talking to our healthcare professionals. We have access to about 40,000 healthcare professionals in Pakistan. And that's a good number to, run a lot of these various programs. Now, the question is, how well do we understand health indicators? How well do we understand health parameters? How well do we understand health in Pakistan? And the way we understand is, the only way to understand it better is studies, clinical trials, and more research. And that is the way forward. And to just give us a brief about how these clinical trials are approved, I'm going to request Dr. IMRAN Bhatt to share the details. Over to Dr. IMRAN Bhatt.
Thank you, Dr. WAMEEZ. Yeah. I will just give you some brief about the current situation in Pakistan, how we will register a clinical site, as well as to register to approve the clinical trials. There are two ways, as we are following the draft biostudy rules 2017, which were currently in the pharma industry practice. So for the approval of the clinical sites, the clinical principal investigator or the co-investigator can apply for the approval of the clinical site. While for approval of the clinical trial, the principal investigator, co-investigator, as well as the sponsor can also apply for that one. So these two processes go side by side, or initially we can apply for the clinical side approvals. So when we apply for the clinical site or for the clinical trial, we will address to chairman clinical study committee or the director division of pharmacy services, and secondly the secretary clinical study committee or the additional director division of pharmacy services. So for the approval of the clinical trial, we use the form 1 of the biostudy rules, which explain a complete checklist, the documents they needed. And for the approval of the clinical study, we use the biostudy rules. Form 2 for the biostudy rules 2017. And the draft has a guideline, and they issue the license for the validity of 2 years. Once it's 2 years completed, then renewal, there's a renewal process. For that, we use prescribed form 3. So these 3 forms having their individual checklist, and we fulfill those checklists and apply for the approval. So the applicant, either the sponsor or you can say the principal investigator, can apply to the draft according to the checklist, and it's a complete one file document. Now they are also accepting the hard copies as well as their online system. They have developed their online system, and we also apply the online. So the draft, what we'll do, the draft will take approximately 30 days, 1 month, and they will scrutinize and check the documents they have been received. If there's any deficiency, they come back and give their feedback 10 to 15 days, and what documents they needed further. So after that, the application approval starts. Once the applicant fulfills all requirement, if there's any deficiencies, then the draft peoples, the concerned department, they inspect if it's related to the clinical site. So they will inspect inspect the panel for the inspection and submit the report to the chairman. So if it's related to the clinical study approvals, they will see all the relevant documents such as the study protocol, the investigation brochure, informed consent form, and other study related documents. If they fulfill their requirements, so they will forward to the clinical study committee. So it's a basically flow chart for the receipt of the clinical study. The applicant apply to the pharmacy division of pharmacy department for the approvals, and the initial scrutiny will take place approximately within 30 days. If it is prerequisites for the application are incomplete, then shortcoming communicated to the applicant, and then applicant fulfill again with a couple of days and send again to the draft personals. So then draft personal move to the file documents to the clinical study committee. If it is completed, then they will scrutinize the application and then forward to the clinical study committee. And they are also having their panel. If it needs any review, then they have a technical team. They review them from the technical personnel. And after consideration of clinical study committee, finalize their minutes. And if it's rejected, they will communicate to the applicants the reason for the rejection. And the applicant having a right, they can again resubmit the shortcomings which they have been mentioned. So, clinical study committee once approved, then they will issue the form form. Form form is a document which is a license for the import drug to be imported. You can say it's the import license for the drug. And the one thing, basically, DRAP, we also have to fulfill the IRB ethical requirements. That's we have to get institutional review board approvals as well as the National Bioethics Committee approval. So there's some guidelines for the constitutional ethical approval. Every institution where the study to be conducted having their own ethical committee, and the ethical committee having a minimum according to GCP guidelines and the DRAB requirements. There are minimum 5 members. 1 member should be the purely scientific, having a field, you can say a technical person, and 1 should be the lay person, and 1 should be the out of the institution. The lay person and out of the institution can be one person. So initially for every clinical trial, we need to the ethical committee approval, and then we have to get the National Bioethics Committee approval, and then the application starts. So it's end of here. Now I hand over this to Dr. WAMEEZ again.
Right. Thank you once again. So after the stringent process of clinical approval, trial approval, then we of course look into some of the initiatives that we've taken. We've taken a few actually, and some of these are, the first is Probe HF, which is prevalence on severity-based evaluation of heart failure. This basically aims to evaluate the severity of heart failure and its impact on patients' quality of life. Then there was another initiative as Relate HF, which is prevalence based on left ventricular ejection fraction and systolic blood pressure for heart failure. Then Recap, which aimed to understand prevalence of atrial fibrillation in Pakistani population. And then STELLTH, which is a study to evaluate the safety and efficacy of telmisartan amlodipine combination in drug-naive hypertensive patients. But today, we are not going to talk about these. Instead, we're going to talk about another very interesting study that we sponsored, and it's called CARDIP. So by CARDIP, we mean cardiovascular disease risk factors in Pakistani population with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes mellitus. It's a cross-sectional study of selected family practitioner clinics in 4 provinces of Pakistan. So broadly speaking, across Pakistan. And this study actually was also published in the Journal of Pakistan Medical Association. So yes, a very credible study. And this study was actually conceptualized and run by Dr. Syed Abbas Raza. He's a consultant oncologist. He's been to US, diplomat, American Board of Internal Medicine and Endocrinology. And he was awarded Tamgha Imtiaz by President of Pakistan. And now he is also president-elect of the International Society of Endocrinology. So Dr. Abbas Raza and his team were pivotal to conceptualizing and running this trial. Apart from Dr. Abbas Raza, who was our principal investigator, there were several others as well, and I'd like to mention a few, which includes Dr. Ali Java, Dr. Imtiaz Hassan, Dr. Faisal Masood, Dr. Zakir Alvi, Dr. Saeed Meher, Dr. A.H. Amir, Dr. Rev Niazi, and Dr. Najmul Islam. So these were regional investigators, and of course, Dr. Abbas Raza being the principal investigator. Also, I would like to mention the team of Shaukat Khanam, who were very, very important and critical to the success of this trial. Right. So why was the study done? Just a quick background of all of this. We're going to talk about cardiovascular background, and then we're going to talk about a bit of diabetes. So this data is from actually World Health Organization, and this is what it is. Cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death globally, and an estimated of 17.9 million people died from cardiovascular diseases in 2019, representing about 32% of all global deaths. And out of these deaths, about 85% were due to heart attack and stroke. But what's more important is over 3/4 of these cardiovascular deaths take place in low and middle income countries. And Pakistan, obviously being amongst low income countries, it becomes very relevant to us. And we all, of course, understand that, cardiovascular disease can be prevented by addressing behavioral risk factors, and it's important to detect these diseases as early as possible to better manage these conditions. Then diabetes is a metabolic disorder, as we understand, with increasing global prevalence, largely due to population expansion, aging, urbanization, increasing obesity, and a sedentary lifestyle. According to one data by WHO, the number of people with diabetes rose from 108 million in 1980 to 422 million in 2014. So that's a big, huge number. And again, similar prevalence, prevalence has been rising more rapidly in low and middle income countries than high income countries. And that's where, again, we come in. Another side of it is that between 2000 and 2019, there was about a 3% increase in diabetes mortality. Compare that, lower and middle income countries, the mortality rate was about 13%. Again, a big, big difference there. And this information actually kind of, further endorses the direction that we took, that according to IDF, which is International Diabetes Federation, almost 26% of adults in Pakistan are affected by diabetes, making the total number of cases approximately around 33 million. So which means, about 1 in 4 adults are now living with diabetes in Pakistan. This is perhaps the highest prevalence rate in the world, and only China and India have a higher number of absolute number of people living with diabetes. So yes, I mean, it's now become very, very important for us to really curb it. This bar chart reflects a study or paper which was published, and the whole idea is that for every combination of risk factors, diabetic patients have 2 to 3 times the level of cardiovascular risk. So if you have one risk, and the risk factors they included were, serum cholesterol, smoking, and hypertension. So compared with one risk, if one had all 3, the mortality rate was much higher. And this also becomes very important for us because generally we see patients with a lot of multifaceted, diseases and risk factors. Few studies from Pakistan have explored the chronic complication of diabetes, including CVD. However, as we understand, no nationwide data exists on cardiovascular complication of diabetes pertaining to Pakistan. And of course, we understand some risk factors for CVD can be better managed to reduce the risk of complication. Now, before we get into further discussion, just a quick understanding of how this was categorized. So the risk factors were categorized in 3 different types. One was definitely modifiable, then probably modifiable, and then fixed. Of course, age, gender, family is fixed, can't be changed. But the more important ones which can be looked at and which can really help us understand and manage risk are cholesterol, high LDL, low HDL, triglycerides, blood pressure, cigarette smoking, diabetes, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, alcohol intake, and of course, platelet hyperactivity. So a vast majority of people with diabetes receive frontline treatment by the GPs and family physicians here in Pakistan. And, lesser number of people go to endocrinologists. Of course, there are lesser number of endocrinologists anyway, but nonetheless, the first line generally is here in Pakistan, the general practitioners and family physicians. So the current study was planned to explore risk factors for cardiovascular complications of diabetes in people presenting to general practitioners and family physicians clinics across Pakistan. And the objective of the study was to determine the frequency and distribution of fixed and modifiable risk factors that contribute to cardiovascular disease amongst newly diagnosed patients with type 2 diabetes mellitus in Pakistan. The study design was prospective, multi-center, descriptive, questionnaire-based study, and the study was supposed to go on for about a year. And the patient population was type 2 diabetes newly diagnosed patients. Now, just a very quick recap or snapshot of the process flow. So first comes the study approval, as Dr. Imran has already shared with us. And the way it was done was that initial approval was taken from the IRB, which was there at Shaukat Khan Memorial Hospital. And then later, this approval was further moved to National Bioethics Committee, and the approval was taken from there. Then comes the study initiation and training part. The principal investigator met with the regional investigator, and the regional investigator then met with the local practitioners. The whole idea was to make them understand the objective and train them of how to go along with this study. And then was the patient enrollment part, where patients were, of course, seen by the GP and the family physicians. So confirmation of eligibility and enrollment after informed consent was done. Completion of study questionnaire was done by the doctor. And then lab tests were also done so that, we could have a complete understanding of the patient. Then this data, which was collected, was sealed in envelopes and sent to the coordinating centers. And this whole logistic support was given by the sponsors, which was us, and hence the data was sent. This is the way the data was sent to the coordinating centers. And then, of course, came the data compilation and analysis part, and eventually later on the publication part. So the eligibility criteria was, first diagnosed type 2 diabetes, diagnosis within last 6 months, no previous or current drugs for type 2 diabetes, age between 30 and 50 years, no documented evidence of coronary heart disease, heart failure, or stroke, and no previous or current drug therapy for hypertension. Also, no previous or current drug therapy for dyslipidemia. The diagnosis of diabetes was based on the ADA, the American Diabetic Association criteria. And so any one of the following would fulfill the requirement, which was fasting plasma glucose of over 126 milligram per deciliter, or HbA1c of 6.5 or greater, then 2-hour OGTT 200 milligram per deciliter or above, or random plasma glucose concentration of more than or equal to 200 milligram per deciliter, with, of course, presence of symptoms. This is just a snapshot of the form that was given and that was filled, which was dispatched to the coordinating centers. Now comes the interesting part, the results. And first, we're going to start off with the profile of patients. So it was across Pakistan. We had Punjab, Sindh, KPK, and Balochistan. And you can see here the percentage of Punjab is slightly more, of course, because we had more cities from Punjab. And secondly, the population of Punjab is probably higher than the other provinces. Similar trend reflects in the ethnicity. Punjabi speaking were 48.5%, and then Urdu speaking 19%, Pathan 11%, Saraiki 9.1%, Sindhi mixed racial, Kashmiri and Balochi. So the total number of patients eventually were 888, so 888. And the mean presenting age was about 42.4 years. Now, in this graph, if we look at it, it's interesting to understand that, we'll categorize those who were less than 39 years or below as young participants, and those who were older than 40 years were, older population. So in the younger and the older, the difference was about 31% in younger, comprised of 31% were young population and 69 were more than 40. And similarly, gender-wise, well, male were 60% and females were about 40%. A younger age of onset is seen in the developing country, which puts the population at high risk of developing complications of diabetes due to longer hypoglycemic exposure. And here we see that, there are about 31% that fulfills this criteria. Now, personal history, right? So first is smoking. Smoking, there were about 84% people who never smoked, and about collectively 15% who either were smokers or who had a history of smoking. And of course, smoking the strong risk factors for developing CVD, it was very important to understand the status of smoking. Atrial fibrillation was only 2.6%, which again was important. And then comes the family history. And in family history, we saw about more than 70% people who had a family history of type 2 diabetes. And also family history of hypertension were almost 40%. So 40% who had family of hypertension and about 72% who had a family of history of type 2 diabetes. And of course, these two being very important risk factors. And then about 25% also had a history of ischemic heart disease, which again is very important. So this slide, this pie chart depicts is almost, there were 94% population which had no family history of stroke, CVA, chronic asthma, and others. So as we were looking at that type 2 diabetes pie chart, family clustering of type 2 diabetes is well known and is high in South Asians. Similarly, in our study, almost 2/3 of the participants had family history of diabetes in first-degree relatives. Family history of ischemic heart disease in first-degree relatives is also a risk factor for development of ischemic heart disease or cardiovascular disease. And then in our study, as we discussed, there were 25% participants had a family history of ischemic heart disease. Now comes the modifiable risk factors. And we'll start off with body mass index. This needs some explanation here, because generally when we say BMI, obesity is considered over 30 kg per meter square. But in this case, ethnic specific criteria was used to define obesity, which was labeled as BMI being more than 25 kg per meter square. And here you can see, and if we change the criteria to 25, almost in the younger population 71% were obese, and in the older population 69% were obese. So this of course becomes very, very important. And this is just kind of a sum of what I just said. The mean BMI of our study population was almost 27.76 kg per meter square, which does not fulfill criteria for the development of, for the developed world. When we use ethnic specific criteria to define obesity, we found almost 70% obese patients in the study. Studies also suggest that for a given BMI, South Asians have more visceral fat than in the Western population, which increases metabolic risk associated with obesity. South Asians are considered to be at risk of developing obesity-related comorbidities at lower level of BMI and waist circumference. So the higher prevalence of obesity may probably be one of the reasons for study population developing diabetes at an early age. And yes, we see now very young population having type 2 diabetes rather than type 1. The next chart is on fasting glucose level. And in the younger population, almost 70% were abnormal, and about 64% were also abnormal, who were more than 40 years of age. An interesting thing here is that about 17% had normal fasting glucose, and that could really be due to two different reasons. One, of course, maybe the glycemic control has been improved by lifestyle modification, or maybe there was some abnormality of postprandial glucose level, which reflected here in this way. Yeah, discuss this. Then the next is HbA1c. Now, there was a significant difference between the younger and the older. The younger had 83.7% abnormal HbA1c, whereas the older people had 84.8%. So the number may seem very less, the difference may seem very less, but we understand even 0.1 or 1/2 the number is quite important when it comes to HbA1c. So HbA1c in two subgroups, younger and older, really revealed higher HbA1c in group B. This difference was significantly significant. This represents poor long-term control of blood sugar or possible delay in diagnosis as well. Blood pressure, of course, we see a lot of hypertension, blood pressure hypertension across Pakistan. And if you look at this chart, we'll see about 45% who were less than 39 had normal blood pressure, and about 37% who were more than 40 years of age had normal blood pressure. But the rest, ranging from 55 to 62, had either pre-hypertension or had hypertension. And hypertension was defined by GNC criteria. Now, this again reflects, the next few slides are going to be related to dyslipidemia. First one is cholesterol. So total cholesterol was abnormal in the younger population of about 38%, whereas the older population had about 34% abnormal range. Then we had LDL cholesterol. Again, we can see the younger and the older difference. Younger population, there were about 47.5% younger population which had abnormal range, and about 44% which had abnormal range in the older age group. HDL cholesterol was seen to also have very similar variation, whereas almost 39.5% of younger population had HDL lower than the normal, whereas about 32.7% people who were older than 40 had abnormal HDL. So low HDL, of course, is not a good sign, and again creates problems, as we understand. Now, VLDL had also very similar reflection. There were about 51.8% abnormal people in 39 age group and 40% in 40-year-old group. Triglycerides, again, for younger, it was about 50%, and for older, they were about 40.5%. So just summing up the scenario about dyslipidemia. So people with diabetes are more likely to develop atherogenic dyslipidemia, as we of course all understand, and which is characterized by raised TGs, raised LDL, elevated VLDL, decreased HDL levels. And the current study found that more than 40% participants had dyslipidemia, wherein the prevalence of elevated total cholesterol was 43.9%, elevated LDL was seen to be around 45%, VLDL was seen around 43.9%, and low HDL was about 34.8%, and triglycerides about 43.6%. And it's quite likely that some of the patients had more than one lipid abnormality, and we've seen that a higher prevalence of dyslipidemia is an important finding, as the prevalence of dyslipidemia in people with type 2 diabetes mellitus would, of course, increase the risk of cardiovascular disease by 3-4 folds compared to people without diabetes having dyslipidemia. Something very similar that we discussed earlier on, having more than one risk factors. And furthermore, 50% of participants in the younger age group had higher VLDL and triglyceride levels compared to the older age group, 40 and above, indicating a higher prevalence of dyslipidemia in younger age group. So then again, this is a very interesting finding that, the younger age group is also now being seen with dyslipidemia. So in conclusion, as we know, cardiovascular and diabetes are amongst the commonest non-communicable diseases in Pakistan, associated with major morbidity, mortality, and burden on healthcare infrastructure. Data also highlights the need of screening for cardiovascular risk factors, especially in younger age group with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes. Ethnicity-specific thresholds are needed for BMI, indicating the need for national consensus guidelines, which for now we don't have. And then public health programs addressing risk factors for cardiovascular disease and importance of lifestyle modification are very important and are much needed. So that is all about Cardiff trial and what we've been doing. One last thing that we would like to mention here is that we can't improve what we don't know. We can't improve what we can't measure. It's a very basic principle. So we need to understand our health to improve our health. And the take-home message here is we need more studies. And now we are looking at the next phase of Cardiff. Dr. Abbas Raza is very passionately working to developing the next phase of this trial, where probably we could consider, taking this cohort of participants and then studying them and understanding what's gone on with them, how their indicators are, how their health is, and the risk factors, of course. So yes, that's another very interesting option in the scenario that we're working on. And we hope that this can also materialize. But all in all, we'd like to encourage everyone to, team up with us, and let's look at our health. Let's do some research. Let's do some studies, and let's try to improve patient care. So thank you so much for giving us time and hearing us.
Thank you very much, Dr. WAMEEZ and your team. It's a great presentation, wonderful work, and very eye-opener sort of thing. So now I will request Dr. Nasiruddin Mahmood, because he's creating a lot of clinical activity back in Pakistan, his views. And my question is that you are providing so much telemedicine. Can you collaborate with the industry to integrate it with the research? And a lot of data, clinical data is going to be generated. Can that be really housed and then be used for some useful clinical stuff? It's over to you, Dr. Nasiruddin Mahmood.
Thank you, Dr. Zair. Dr. Kadri, thank you for a wonderful presentation. As a disclaimer, I must say that I'm a pediatrician, so I don't see patients of diabetes every day, but both myself and I can see Dr. Akhtar Hamid has joined us. We see future diabetic patients every day. And basically, in an environment, in an economic milieu, in whatever circumstances we are all aware of, when you have limited time to leapfrog and catch up with what's happening in the domain of non-communicable diseases, including diabetes, and with limited resources. My mantra is always towards prevention. My mantra is always towards striking early and go for the lowest hanging fruit, which will give us the biggest possible yield. And I think I heard two very nice phrases from your talk, Dr. Kadri, at the end. One was the fact that we need more data, we need more studies, and Pakistan needs it, and the people of Pakistan need it. And secondly, the magic word, team up. I think that is the key. You know, this is a very unique forum, Dr. Uzair, because this is a forum where we now have representatives from the industry, Highnoon. We have Dr. Uzair and ourselves, we have our chairman of our Canadian Pakistani Research and Development Council, Dr. Akhtar Hamid. We are also doing this as a platform of APPNA, which is basically the organization of Pakistani Physicians in North America. And so just by naming these three bodies, I can say that we already have the players in place whereby different modalities of teaming up and collaboration can kick in. And I'm just going to comment on two areas. And one is capacity building. I think in Pakistan, one of the biggest challenges is that we are always putting out fires. And we don't have the opportunity or the circumstances whereby we can take a step back. And I'm talking more about people who are at the front end, the clinicians, that we can take a bigger picture and understand, okay, how do we deal with this problem in the long term? We are always putting out fires. We're treating the patients, we're treating the dialysis, we're treating the hypertension, we're treating the diabetic retinopathy and all those things. But at the end of the day, we are not getting an opportunity to take a step back and look forward. So one area where I think industry can help the clinicians and organizations, not individual clinicians maybe, but organizations which are working in the health domain, is to enhance their capacity to do research. That's an area which, and maybe we can talk offline about this later. The other area which I think might be closer to your heart as a pharma industry is the ability to set up CTUs, the clinical trial units. And these organizations, these units may be present in some of the larger university places like the Aga Khan and places, but there are smaller organizations, smaller groups where they have a whole burden of patients, and amazing research can be done if they only had the ability to meet the criteria to become a CTU. And maybe industry can help organizations, especially organizations in the not-for-profit sector, to be able to do that. So that was one part of my comment. The other part of my comment was going to be that as a pediatrician, and I'm sure I'll have full support from Dr. Akhtar Hamid on this, is that Dr. Uzair very kindly introduced me as a founder of the Child Life Foundation, but I'm also the trustee of another organization which does a totally different work. We provide high quality digitalized primary health care in the Kachi Abadis of Karachi. And we provide care to more than 1.2 million adults, children, women, whatever, GP practices in the Kachi Abadi. And we are struggling every day because of the cost of diabetes and diabetes medication because of the inflation that's happened. What I'm trying to say is that we have an opportunity to do something very unique, Dr. Kadri. The opportunity we have is to do a Pakistani equivalent of the famous Framingham study.
I'm sorry, I lost you there.
Yeah, we have an opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
We have the opportunity, if we can team up together, to perform what is the Pakistani equivalent of the Framingham study. And we can create the birth cohort in the Kachi Abadis of Karachi, where 6 or 7 different ethnic populations are pocketed separately. And we can follow them over the next 20 years. And the not-for-profit sector alone cannot do it.
Right.
We will need collaboration and teaming up with organizations like Highnoon to actually conceptualize it. We will need the help of professional bodies like APPNA to help us. And we will need the help of the group of Pakistani entrepreneurs, especially in the IT sector, who are currently here represented by our friend Umar Hayat from the Silicon Valley, to actually figure out how we can do this in the most scientific manner and leveraging AI. So, these are all things that we can debate on a separate platform later on. I just wanted to respond to your talk and say that I think it's an opportunity for us to grab, inshallah.
Inshallah, Ji. And I think we're spot on, something that's generally required, and we'd be very happy to explore opportunities to improve patient care and, do something for people here. Absolutely, Ji. And we can talk about it, discuss it very soon, Ji.
Thank you, Dr. Nasiruddin Mahmood. Professor Akhtar Hamid, can you unmute yourself, please, and share your comments?
So thank you very much. It was a wonderful talk. And everything is not rosy in our side as well. Why I'm saying this? Because if I look at the data provided by our Canadian Health, it's about 1 in 12 Canadian adults also have 20 years or over. They are diagnosed with heart diseases, and the death rate is 3 times higher in adults who is 20 and above as compared to the one who doesn't have the heart diseases. So and there are every hour almost 14 Canadian dies with heart diseases. So it's not only Pakistan, it's just a particular ethnicity, and those ethnicity has come to Canada now, right? And those ethnicity has come to Canada, and it is having a globalization effect here. And so the work you are doing over there can also be replicated here, and to see the difference. Now, the thing which Dr. Nasir has mentioned, I 100% endorse, and especially in capacity building and to take the way forward. Because even in children, we are seeing more and more type 2 diabetes now. And diabetes are getting more in number in terms of not only due to the cholesterol and whatnot, but they are also physical activity is going down and down because of the IT or these iPad and these kind of all internet uses. The children are not even getting half an hour, which is a recommended physical activity for them. So there are a lot we can do in terms of if we have partners, the bodies which Dr. Nasir has said. So I'm all for it, and we can definitely chat on a separate platform, so we can build up something which you want to do, like Highnoon is doing.
Thank you, Professor Akhtar Hamid. If you remember, Dr. Abbas Raza was planning to have an endocrine moot here in Toronto a couple of years ago, and we were trying to host that occasion, if you remember. So that was an activity. And now we have with us Dr. Umar Hayat. So Dr. Umar Hayat, please unmute and introduce yourself. And you are practically into the field in Pakistan. You are also with Gates Foundation, and you have the clinical research organization in Pakistan. And how do you see this teaming up with the industry? We have been trying for quite some time. So please share your comments. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Brief intro. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Azad, and thanks, Dr. Qadri and Asif, for a wonderful presentation. I will say, given my background, work for 3 startup companies, launched 4 products. One of company got sold like $5.2 billion. And then I'm a partner launching 2 companies in the US. I'm a CTO with one. Actually, I'm CTO with both, but I would be managing partner with one and CTO with one. I'm also the vice president of CMC supply chain with a Danish company. We have launched the CRO business in Pakistan. We are opening the training institute in Pakistan. We have launched the AI platform in Pakistan. Back to your point, Dr. Nasiruddin. So a lot of things, very less sleep, but very happy to do what we are doing. We're also doing the collaborations with the local industry in Pakistan, like CCL Pharma. And here come my question. Given your background, Dr. Qadri, Medico-Marketing, very relevant trial you have conducted. But the one trial which industry has been reluctant to do, and now we are paying the price for that, not doing it. That is, as you said, we cannot approve if we don't know, the bioequivalence study. which was kind of a waiver. I will call it the bio waiver from the draft, and industry enjoyed it and they deserve it because we are just starting the industry. But now it's playing against us, because if we don't do the bioequivalent studies, we cannot market those products in the US or European market or Japanese market, the markets which have the capability to pay back the high margins. So I think we are losing that business. So that's number one. And I will tell you, when you will, and I'm sure some of companies might be already doing the bioequivalent studies, because if we start doing those bioequivalent studies, A, we will develop the centers, the infrastructure around, the capacity building we always talk about. B, that will give us, open the doors for the US market. Okay, so that's number two. Now, what's happening, I will say, by not doing the bioequivalent study, we are limiting ourselves just to Pakistan or probably few other countries like Vietnam or Philippines. Quality of our products is a questionable because we have not proved it. So I think that's the study we should focus. And look, I mean, you presented the among the top 200 companies in the Forbes with under 1 billion. So when we will be crossing the billion? Okay, I think that's where our eyes should be. When we got the ISO certification, when we are going to get the FDA certification, when we are going to register. And there are so many ways you can enter into this market. I mean, if we miss the boat, for example, if we were heavy in the research and development during the COVID time, easy to get into on the files with the FDA. They were so lenient. There was so much flexibility. So I will stop here. I think I would like to hear your comments and what, as an industry, not only just the Highnoon, as an industry in Pakistan, we are thinking. By the way, the product we are developing with CCL, we are going to do the bioequivalent. Actually, I will not call the bioequivalent. I will call it biosuperiority. So that's my aim. I may end up having the bioequivalence only. But what I have observed, whether it's a CCL, it gives the challenge to the young talent, and they will meet you give them, I want the bioequivalent study on this one. Believe me, they will work with a different mindset. And the science, the talent we have, they can meet the biosuperior. I'm not even talking about the bioequivalent. So I will stop here. Thank you.
I think that's a very valid and a very interesting point to raise. And I totally, absolutely agree with you on that one. But as of now, many companies are now working to developing and getting bioequivalent products certified. So it's in the pipeline, and not one, but I believe many companies are now in the race to getting as much as possible and get a maximum number of bioequivalent certifications. So yes, but look, for us, it has been an evolution from the point where we started off to the point where we are. And just to give you a reality check to all of us, really, how many FDA-approved plants do we have in Pakistan? None. Absolutely. How many FDA plants are there next door in other countries? Maybe a bit more. Yeah, maybe a bit more. So yes, I think it's time to pull up our socks and get this going. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Kadri, can I ask a question? I mean, this is a very interesting observation that I think Dr. Umar Hayat and both of you probably shared it as a news to me, that FDA-approved plants are at a high bar and difficult to achieve. What about European standards? Do we have anything that meets the European standards?
Do you want me to comment on this one? Because I do day in, day out. Nothing is
even the Eastern European standard.
Yeah. The Europeans are European standards, so it's not Eastern Western standards. So the question is, it's a will we are lacking. It's not a talent we are lacking. It's not a money we are lacking. It's not a facility we are lacking. The one thing which goes against us is the security and safety. So the FDA inspectors are a little reluctant to go in that part of the world. And Dr. Azad talked about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. My goodness, those guys have to go through the crazy training before they can take the trip to the Pakistan. And when they will land in Pakistan, there would be like a whole squad basically accompanying them. So that's a biggest cons which goes against us. But I think if you look, I mean, I have not been to Highnoon, but I would like to have even Dr. Kadri, we may have even possibility to do the collaboration. I have been to Getz Pharma facility. My goodness, I will say probably you can classify them as the top-notch facility even in US. The other challenge, Dr. Nasiruddin, we miss is we have the talent, but we can't culture them, we can't form them. Okay, and that's exactly Dr. Uzair was a catalyst actually behind. So what I am opening in Pakistan, there is no culture of bringing the tea or ringing the bell and somebody will open it. No, that nonsense is over. And there is no boss and there is no junior stuff. I mean, they're all, and let those young guys have a crazy talent to say what they want to say and listen them and see the value in them as a senior person. So I will also encourage Dr. Dr. Kadri, if you plan to do this kind of study in future, use those CROs. It will give them the opportunity. Don't do with the universities. I mean, believe me, I'm working with the universities. People don't work over here with the universities. Industry don't work over here with the universities because of the timelines, not probably the quality. But think of working with the universities in Pakistan. And I am why they were working with the universities in Pakistan too. So, but we work with differently. So we are plant our people in the university. When they move a paper, our guy would be there. Because this is a one way. If you can train your people, then you can manage basically the university. The seriousness is not there. Work ethics are not there. The data, how to compile, the time management. So there are a lot of challenges, but we should not be afraid of those challenges because I strongly believe we can overcome those challenges. And inshallah, we are overcoming those challenges. So I will say allow those CROs. I was so happy to hear last time the draft 6 for last, I don't know, 5 years, there was only 6 CROs. Now we have 20 CROs. Open the doors, let them compete because that's how they will improve on the quality. So yeah, so back to your question, my apologies. So I think there is no easy entry because both European as well as the FDA, they have the same measure for whatever, but there are the different strategies which you can use. You can become a contract manufacturer. So you don't need to bring the product, but you can qualify your facility. So once the facility, so it's a stepwise approach. You can work for the orphan drugs, for example, which are much needed. Okay, and you can bring the cost down. Okay, so those are the other strategies. Then once you get the facility, then you can go for the ANDA. Don't go even for the NDA or 505(b)(2) because you can probably bring the local. And Pakistan, I made this comment previously as well. China prices has gone up, manufacturing costs. India, they have gone up even before the China prices up. Where is the next cheap heaven? That is Pakistan. Not Philippines. We make the Nike there. We don't do the science there. But when it comes 250 million people, a lot of foreign qualified, a lot of expats going back. Infrastructure, capacity building, the government stories, those are the challenges, and few of the challenges we are facing. Okay. Without even making the noise, by the way, I said, okay, we're going to live with it and we will change once we are in it. So anyway, I don't want to take much of the time. So there are the several ways, and that's where I think the teaming up, Dr. Kadri, will certainly play a role. Because even the product we are going to develop, we are not just thinking of Pakistan. We are thinking of Pakistan because there is no drug available in Pakistan. But eventually we will bring to the US. So if you partner APPNA MERIT, actually it's an offshoot of the APPNA MERIT by the Revive Pharma US. We are looking for a partner in Pakistan, and the offline I can take it. We will use your machinery, material, everything, equipment, but we will have our own people because that's the people which are gonna make the really big difference. Sorry, Dr. Azhar,
Thank you.
I think it's a long time.
Thank you, Umar Bhai. And thank you, Dr. Nasir, being a panelist with us. And many thanks for Dr. Kadri, as Dr. Uzair is having some internet issues. So I thought I'll take this opportunity to thank you, all of you, and all of our listener and audience. Thank you once again. We are 6 minutes above our usual time. So I would like to end this with a big thank you again. I will see you again in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.